Hi, everyone. Welcome to Figuring Out Fabric, where I ask dumb questions and you get smart answers. And I'm really, really excited to have T from DataRocks on here for a number of reasons. One, because it's very kind of her to be joining from New Zealand. What time is it where you're at right now?
It's perfect. It's 9:30 a.m. It's
Okay,
it's
that's
fine.
not bad. All right.
9 a.m. on a Friday. It's great.
But two other reasons I'm excited to have T from DataRocks on here. One is I really want to get guests on the show that are outside of my personal bubble, and she's a bit of a Renaissance woman. So she knows Power BI, Tableau, Figma, was it Adobe Illustrator? Was that the tool? Just a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I'm an information designer. I do both sides of things, data and design. So there's a range of tools there. Yeah.
So it's not just one kind of tool, but then also you write about, consult on data visualization, and I think you and I had this conversation in DMs, but I tell people like that with Power BI, that's my weakest area, I feel like, or at least my most insecure. We can decide whether it's which one it is. So I'd love to get a chance to talk about like when you think about data visualization for corporations, companies, what do you think about? Because whenever the problem is that I see two kind of areas that we see a lot or we think about a lot that in my opinion are not particularly applicable to what, say, a Power BI developer might do. You have the LinkedIn influencers who make the most beautiful one-page report. It may not even be functional, but it's got drop shadows or it's got some cool animation or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily solve a business use case. Like, I mean, even ignoring like the influencers, I go onto the Power BI subreddit and I'm thinking about writing a blog post around this too, because the mistakes I made in my early 20s is you take the data and you think anything I can turn into a chart is net value. And then whenever you have a chart that shows that some sort of like two value category is roughly even, like what if you served, right? So like descriptive statistics without thought. So you have all that where there's no next layer, answering questions, driving action. And then you have this kind of like more journalism kind of data viz, where you're breaking open a story and you have time to annotate everything and add color and do all this stuff. And so I think whenever, at least for me, when I think about data viz, my mind goes to one of those two groups of people. And I'm never going to be either one of those people. But somehow I get paid to make reports. So like when you, a professional, thinks about like data viz as it relates to like working within the business, someone who might use Excel today or Power BI or Tableau or whatever, how do you define it? How do you think about it?
Okay, so it is a field that is hard to define because it is a very broad field. And
Sure.
I do agree that, the whole influencer, let's get clicks because my dashboard is all purple and it has drop shadows and stuff.
Yeah, right.
That's unhelpful because we lack good examples of functional data viz. So data visualization is a subset of something bigger called information design.
Okay.
And the key word there is information. So when we're talking about a business context, it is a tiny little piece of information design. So you have like a big bubble, information design, and inside of it, you have the data storytelling the journalists do in the Financial Times. You have, the beautiful data visualizations that somebody does in R, or something that's highly customized and super interactive that somebody did using D3. And then you have BI. Business intelligence, with a tiny little bubble inside of all of that. The key word that ties all of these things together is communication. It's information. So data visualization in a BI context is about grabbing all the data you have or just data sets that you need, translating that in a form that the business or the people of the business who don't have time don't have the skills or don't really need to spend time learning the skills to wrangle, analyze, understand data in itself, that they can still use it and they can still consume it and they can still do things with it. So it's the translation of like the complexity of data, break it down into usable pieces so that somebody else can use it, can do something with it, which is very different from thinking of it as charts or thinking of it as graphs, because that can be done with a written report. That can be done with a PowerPoint deck.
Right.
That can be done with a dashboard. That can be done with multiple ways. It can be a PDF with words and charts. So there's several ways how you communicate and translate data in a business setting. And I think that tools like Power BI or even Tableau, they focus a lot on the dashboard aspect, and that's a tiny little piece of the communication puzzle. And there's also this entire focus on making the data usable up to a certain point. But as soon as the people element comes in, there's this huge abysm of lack of skill. And, people are so tired, like they ran the marathon until they saw the finishing line. And the finishing line, which is like the chart somebody's going to read and snip and put on a PowerPoint deck and show their boss. No, and they don't run over that part. They don't get there. Yeah. So that's what it is in a visualization.
This is going to sound like a cliche, but as a consultant, you're giving me chills, literally, because that chasm is the difference between me making a profit and losing my shirt. Because so I answer questions on the Power BI subreddit, and a lot of people ask about freelancing or consulting. And first people will be like, well, how do I sell a dashboard? And I tell people, like, I've never sold a dashboard. I've never sold an air quotes dashboard. I've never sold a screen or a piece of glass or anything. What I sell is either proof that this tool will work for your data, proof that it can be done. I sell augmented capacity because you want to learn it, you're going to learn it, but you need someone to help just get things moving. Or oftentimes what I sell is almost like a therapist for your business process, right? Whereas like, tell me where it hurts. And then, we try stuff and like better one, better two or whatever, but never have I sold a dashboard. And the thing is, I think you'll probably agree with me on this. I mentioned it on the first episode with Christina Ferris. BI is like the most iterative IT subset I've ever dealt with. And like, if you've done design, it's similar, right? Where you just know you are never going to get the first draft and like get the thumbs up from the customer, because they're going to look at it and be like, oh, well, I said I wanted faster horses, but could you actually make a car? Or like, I've had this happen. So I don't know how many like lift and shift kind of migrations you've ever done, where it's like, here's our report in Excel and we need it in this thing. And
it's what I've done the most.
Yeah. And you're trying to validate the report. And you're like, okay, what's the business logic for this card, this chart? Why is it there? What's the value? And they like kind of think, and they look at you and say, I don't know if we use that. And then you get rid of it. Because no one documented it. No one ever. Yeah. And so the point being that chasm is the difference between quoting 30 hours versus 60, because you understand the complexity of the task, or it's the difference between building the thing they asked you to make that they didn't actually want, or the thing that they actually need and will thank you for. Yeah. And guess what? They may not always pay you for the thing they asked for. And as a consultant, like, what are you going to do? Sue them? Maybe. So, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah,
I mean, I know where you're coming from, and I understand that data visualization, like the tangible part, the part that you put your eyes on, is the chart, right? So it's a bunch of charts on the screen, but that is not what data visualization is. Data visualization and information design is, what does the person that is consuming those charts and consuming that dashboard got out of it? Did they do something about that data? So that extra step is what sets apart a screen full of charts from a successful visualization or successful information design flow. And it is a flow. And dashboards, data stories, information decks, whatever, they're all part of a bigger puzzle. So it's never just, oh, I'm going to do 20 dashboards, and these 20 dashboards are going to solve every single business problem.
Working at the dashboard factory today. Just,
you know, and often, and this is something, there's a name for it. It's called solutioneering. Have you ever heard that?
No, I can imagine what it means, but yeah.
Yeah, solutioneering is when you jump into a solution before you fully understand the problem. So, it's the faster horses thing that you're talking about. And BI is a field full of solutioneering.
Yeah.
It's not born of bad intention, it's born of haste. People are hasty in delivering something. You have to have something to show for your work, right? You can't be talking about it for 20 hours. So you jump into a solution. So a client gets to you and they says, oh, we have problems with sales orders. Very vague statement. Your solutioneering is, I'm going to make you a sales dashboard with all the orders in it and 25 charts and all these KPIs.
Here's the revenue, blah, blah, blah. Here's the margin. And then what's the
margin? Here's a table. Here's all your sales orders. Here's where they come, where they go. And you've never really stopped to ask them, okay, but what is the problem you're having with sales orders? And is it a problem with sales orders? And then they explain to you and say, no, my problem with sales orders is that clients are canceling because the orders are getting late. So that's not a sales problem. It's a logistics issue.
It's not a single issue. Yeah. And then if you're smart, if you've done this enough times, the immediate next step is not just the viz. Who cares about the viz?
No.
What's the feedback loop? Right?
Yeah.
You can color late orders magenta for all I care, or chartreuse or whatever color. What's the business process that it goes back to Chris in fulfillment and says, get off your butt and get it out of the warehouse or whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
What's the human process?
Yeah, and here's the thing. When we got into data viz, I did not know what it was called. I did not know it was its own field. It wasn't a conscious decision. I worked in supply chain, and I had problems that I had to explain to my bosses and to my managers and to my colleagues and stuff. And I would go into a spreadsheet, make a bunch of charts and go, here's why this is happening and this is how we solve it. And that was very close to the reality and I was very close to the problem. I was very close to understanding why thing was that way. Yeah. And that got me into going more and more further from the business side and more into the data side, right?
Yeah.
But when I got into the data side, I saw that people have all of these assumptions about business people and what they do and how their job is and whatever, but they never really go and talk to them.
Yeah, no, I was so guilty of that. My first job in BI, I'd taken a BI course in college and I needed a job. So I asked the guy who worked at Bayer Material Science. I didn't know what a credit memo was. I didn't know what a debit memo was. We'll add it in the show notes, but there's a great book. It's a little old called Financial Intelligence for IT People. And it's just such a great way to understand how the business works. And one of those I don't want to call it a light bulb moment, but reading it, and it's accounting, it says in the book, accounting is basically 50% industrial strength labeler. It's all kind of made up, and you just need to make sure that whenever your government comes to check, it's the right kind of made up. And I ran into this with my business because I'm self-employed. I have a legal entity. And so I am both the proletariat and the bourgeoisie for SQL Gene Training, LSE, right?
Yeah.
And
same. I'm a one girl, but yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, so I handle payroll through ADP, but at the beginning, payroll was me making one bank transfer for Eugene the worker and one bank transfer for Eugene the owner. And the only thing that indicated which was my memory. And then when I put out the taxes, right, it's just all industrial strength labeling. We prize technical prowess so highly. And we condescend people that don't know the technology as well as we do, right? I'm telling you, I'm going to get blasted on Reddit for this, but half of the time, if you're complaining that your users want export to Excel, that is, as the kids would say, a skill issue on your part. Sometimes it is, okay, valid, people just don't use the tool, but half the time, you need to go ask them, like, well, what are you using it for? Or what do you need it for? And like, you know, sometimes it's frustrating. You add a page with a giant table, but sometimes you go, oh, I'm trying to use the wrong tool or whatever.
And you know something that I want to put there to get you and myself blasted on Reddit is that is a design problem. Oh, the ugly D word. So design, usually when we talk about that in like the context of Power BI, Fabric, we're very technical minded people. They just go, no, it's just making things pretty and look good and blah, blah, blah. And design is function. So if you're having people telling you, oh, I need to extract this to Excel, that is a design issue. That is a design problem. Because you haven't gone there, talked to them, and figured why they are using the thing. What are they doing with the information after you give it to them? You know, it's a basic question, but it's often so overlooked. And it is a principle. It is a design problem. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever want to understand the business, but also go on a death march, try doing an ERP migration. That is definitely one way you learn every piece of the business. I can tell you from personal experience. You'll learn a lot.
Yeah. And also you learn how much junk a company produces over the years and how much you just collect junk and just become data hoarders after a point, right? I am hoarding all of this information and nobody has ever used it, ever. If I deleted it, nobody's going to miss it.
Yeah, and sometimes you're lucky and clear stuff out, but it's amazing because at my last job, I worked at a fire protection company. So think fire sprinklers, portable fire extinguishers, all that kind of stuff. That also bought an IT company, and it was kind of weird. We were moving to an ERP system written by another fire protection company. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, you think, oh, they're in the same industry, so they must be similar. No, it's like a Nautilus shell that's perfectly formed around the organism. And you just find out there's all these little edge cases of how they do stuff differently. Like, well, our customer IDs have 3 letters and then a number, or all this stuff. No, this helps make some sense because when I think about design, I think a lot of times I just think about, like you said, the aesthetics.
Yeah.
And the fact that engineering is not what I'm thinking. Usability study is actually there, what you're talking about. And actually think about, like, I'll be honest, when I write a Power BI report, I am never giving much thought about once it goes past the eyeballs. Like, I'll be smart enough to use conditional formatting to be like, okay, let's highlight all this kind of stuff. But the way you talk is really interesting because you're clearly thinking about like user, like knowledge retention, information absorption. Do you know what I mean? Like just how effectively does it actually make its way in and stay there? And that's something I'm never thinking about.
Yeah, and that's what, data visualization, as you see on social media, needs to be eye-catchy, right?
Yeah, right.
Because you need people to pay attention to it. So, and often people confuse the eye-catchiness with what data visualization actually is. But in a BI setting, in a business setting, you don't have the scrolling through doom and gloom factor where you need to call attention by the aesthetics. So even when you look at the various aesthetics, visualizations in social media, they are functioning a purpose. They are trying to retain your attention through looking a certain way. So in business, you don't have that because a dashboard is something that somebody is going to look at regularly. So as soon as they pass through that first barrier of getting used to what it looks like, what each one of the functions do, blah, 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 they know it. So next week, they don't need all the flashy drop shadows right anymore because they are not even processing that anymore. They just go straight to the number they need. So they go, I need the sales number. I know where it is. I go to that page. I have that page bookmarked. And that's exactly what I need to see. I just need to see a number.
Yeah.
So this is the thing you actually have to develop for. You have to develop for the flow of information. That's what information design does. So you're designing the flow of information somebody is consuming. It's amazing when I see discussions like, don't use pie charts, don't use tables, don't use Excel. Information design is tool agnostic. As long as it gets the information across, and as long as the person on the other side made use of it, you were successful. You
Right.
don't have to. You don't have to have like all of the bells and whistles and all the interactions. And this is something that often I fight over with clients, because sometimes they want it to look a certain way because that's what they saw on social media, and they want it to look flashy and looking polished and looking professional and looking on brand is one thing, and it is part of function. But again, it's looking polished, professional, and on brand. That's not the same of just adding some flair or adding animation or adding an image or adding something there that doesn't perform a function there. If it has a function, and looking on brand is one function that, a report that's going to be snipped externally or something like that has to have, it's not about the form. That's what I'm saying. It's about what I'm going to do with the information that's displayed there. So it is a strange place to be because it involves a lot of people input. And as you said, it's deeply iterative, because even if we define a problem, problems change and problems expand, and people might have only one question to start with because they've never really saw the answer. As soon as they get the answer, they're going to open up to more questions and more questions and more questions and more questions. It becomes kind of a choose your own adventure kind of game flow.
Yes.
Where you go like, this is my starting point, sales numbers, but why is my sales like this? Here are your top performing orders. Oh, but I don't want to know the top. I want to know why I'm not higher. Oh, here are your bottom performing orders. Okay, so you have to draw all that flow even before you start developing something complex like a dashboard. And that is part of design. That's what information design does. That's where the power is. It's not in choosing the shade of blue or highlighting and all that. That's very good for social media. But that information is ultimately in business intelligence what's going to make or break your dashboard. It is what's going to make your report successful or not. Like, can people ask a question and then have the answer, and then think, oh, but what if, and have the answer. Oh, but what if this now, and have the answer, and then do something about it. Often that flow is not met, and that's something that, as an information designer, is like the first thing that I do. I don't even jump into looking at the data itself before I actually understand what people are going to do with it. Because it might be that I don't even need the whole thing. I just need like a subset.
Yeah.
So it's upside down from what most people think the process would be like.
There's a book, I don't know if you read it. It's Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug, I want to say.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure, I know you have an extensive bookshelf. Yeah? Do we got it? Yes, yes. I haven't read the new edition. Yeah. I've not read the original edition. But that's the thing I was trying to get at that makes me think about it, is when I said kind of usability, it's just the idea that the thing I like about the way that you talk is I can imagine taking a report that information design has been applied to and doing a study and asking 10, 20, 200 people, all right, can you find out whether sales improved or not? Yeah. And then measure the difference made by the information design that was applied. Yes. Whereas what we think about with normal data viz is more like the taste test kind of competitions, right? And one of the funny things they found, this may be apocryphal, but if it isn't, I'll get a link in the show notes. They would do a taste test between Pepsi and Coke. And people would be like, oh, I like Coke. Coke's better. Coke's better. In a blind taste test, people go for the most salient difference, which is sugar. It's sweetness. And so I feel like part of what happened with New Coke in the 80s was they did these taste tests and they didn't realize that people liked the Coke for the entirety of the flavor and the nuance and the subtlety. And so a lot of this eye candy is just doing a flavor contest and it's all sugar. But what you're talking about is a lot more like the nutrition, the bioavailability, and how well does it get consumed stuff. So no, I think that's helpful. we're already almost at half an hour, so I'll have to have you on
Yeah.
again sometime. But no, that helps. One other link I want to mention, we'll put in the show notes. Kurt Bueller just did a post on how pie charts aren't the end of the world, which I love and
Well, they're not.
appreciate.
Yeah, they're not. They're fine. They're fine.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, the thing to understand, I said this in the first episode about ETL, but I'll say it about DataVis too. If the customer, like riffing on what you said, if the customer asks for a radial chart and it gets them to use the report, and trying to force them to use whatever fancy, like a box plot, is going to cause the project to fail, then a radial chart is a win, and it's the best design because it's what actually gets used.
Okay, so I do have a bunch of posts about this stuff. I wrote my own personal data design manifesto. You can see it on my website if you want. It's 12 principles, and you're going to see that in none of them I mention tools, chart types, colors, or UI elements. They are all things, people-driven things. They are principles that work and they work very well for me because they talk about purpose, they talk about clarity, they talk about context, they talk about being accessible. And if you tick those 12 boxes, my experience, because I do use it as my own frame of reference, is that your data visualization is going to be successful, whatever it is, whichever shape it is.
That makes sense.
But none of them has anything to do with choosing colors and blah, blah, blah. Those are the refined stuff. If you really want to look very professional, fine. But if you have to start today with DataVis and you have no idea what you're doing, just make sure you have very clearly defined three things. Who you're building it for, in what context are they going to use it, and for what purpose. If you know audience, context, and purpose, just these three things, the chart will build itself, basically, because it will look at it and go like, okay, in this context, for this person, in this purpose, that's exactly what they need. Sometimes all they need is a table, and that's okay.
All right, well, let's wrap up with the questions. So normally this first one is about Fabric, but I know like you've touched it some, but you have plenty of opinions on Power BI. So what's your favorite and least favorite Power BI features?
Oh my God.
Do you have a favorite? It's okay. You can tell me no.
Do I have a favorite? That's a difficult one because I'm at a low point with Power BI. I think
is there anything you like at all?
Power Query is my favorite thing in Power BI. Not
really
something you want to hear from an information designer, I bet, but I think it's the best part of Power BI. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, right? No, totally. I sincerely agree with you. Anything that allows someone to load flat files, make GUI-based transformations, and then validate the data at every step, utterly amazing.
That is 60% of an analyst's work done right there. So it's good.
And it empowers business users because the way I describe it is the 80-20 rule. I see that face. 80% of what you need to do in Power Query, there's a button for. 20% is a nightmare and you have to go down to the code and, right?
But it is niche cases. You are not going to use it.
Yeah, exactly. So
I say Power BI knows what it's doing in Power Query. My least favorite is the visual layer. Everything visuals. Visual. The approach is all wrong. I don't think.
No, totally fair. Maybe we'll have you on for an episode to hear about how we need to burn it to the ground and start over. We're out of time for now. The other question, where I bumped into you on Blue Sky primarily, but where can people find you? Anything you want to pitch? I know you got a couple different things going on.
So Peach, I don't have much in the sense of latest updates, but I do have a still active, albeit very scarce newsletter. If you want to look for it, it's Design Matters or DataVis Design Matters. You can subscribe if you like, and everything else, like where to find me, what I do, what I'm up to, you can check my website. So that's datarocks.co.nz for New Zealand.
All right, we'll add a link for the Americans that don't know what a Z is, and
Oh, Z, as in Zealand.
That's not good. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, good, oh, good. Yeah, I hope it was useful. Yeah.